He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hello, I'm Simon Morris. It always seems that the most bitter disputes, whether in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, or over the unbearable wokeness of the new Snow White movie, takes place between people the rest of the world has some difficulty telling apart. Even worse are the wars that take place within the same country, where the public find themselves at odds with those they initially chose to lead them.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
I'm not sure why they call them civil wars. Civility is hardly the defining characteristic of any of them, whether they were the American War between the states, the English Wars of the Roses, or the most famous of family squabbles when Agamemnon led a Greek army against his sister-in-law, Helen of Troy.
Father, you are a great king because you love all of Troy. That is the way I love Helen.
I want her back. Will you go to war with me, brother?
Still, it's an ill wind. What came out of the famous Trojan War were a couple of books generally accepted to be among the earliest works of literature in all history, both by an ancient Greek called Homer. If anyone can take credit for inventing fiction, it's this guy.
No son of Troy will ever submit to a foreign ruler.
Then every son of Troy shall die.
Now you know who you're fighting.
The Iliad was about the last week of the Trojan War, in which not much happens. Lots of bickering, a certain amount of slaughter, but no giant horse, no fall of Troy, all a bit of a fizzer. But Homer's follow-up, the Odyssey, he decided not to call it Iliad 2, had more plot than anyone could possibly wish for.
Help me! To the boats, quickly!
As Odysseus attempts to sail back home, he can't land anywhere without adventures attacking him. One-eyed giants, sirens, vindictive witches and skeletal armies. There have been countless filmed versions of Homer's greatest hit, including the Coen brothers' Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Can't you see it, Everett? Them sirens did this to Pete. They loved him up and turned him into a horny toad.
Oh Brother was nominated for an Oscar for Best Adaptation, despite Joel and Ethan Coen freely admitting they'd never actually read the Odyssey. Unlike distinguished English-Italian writer-director Uberto Pasolini, who's taken on the last bit and called it The Return.
I need to understand.
You cannot understand. I cannot understand.
We will.
The Return stars Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche in the grown-up portion of the story, where Odysseus, reunited with his wife Penelope, has to take stock of whether it was all worth it. Also this week, another tale of civil war, though clergyman Dietrich Bonhoeffer had very little help when he tried to take on Adolf Hitler.
It's an honor to meet you, Moshe.
We've brought you here so you can tell the Swiss the truth about what is being perpetrated by Hitler.
We have church contacts in Geneva who will help upon your arrival in the city.
But first, the perennial paradox. How can the Iranians make such sophisticated films in the face of brutally repressive authorities? Case in point, the Oscar nominee The Seed of the Sacred Fig.
تو این 20 سالی که من با باباتون هستم همیشه آرزو داشتی همچین روزی برسه.
خب الانم که قاضی تحقیقات شده این خطرها هست دیگه.
Hollywood likes to boost any of their films with the slightest political angle as courageous, as if the filmmaker was under threat by anything stronger than a poor turnout on the opening weekend. By contrast, take the fate of the makers of a recent Iranian film. It was shot pretty much in secret for fear of being shut down. Director Mohammad Rasulov had to escape on foot over the mountains to get to the Cannes Film Festival. Rasilov picked up 4 awards there, only to be told his property at home had been confiscated, he'd been sentenced to 8 years imprisonment and a flogging. The film that created this fuss is called The Seed of the Sacred Fig.
اصلا به عنوان پدر نه، به عنوان کارشناس که اندازه سن تو این سیستم بوده بهتر از تو نمیدونم چه خبره؟
نه. چون توشی.
Like so many Iranian films, I think of Oscar winners A Separation and The Salesman, and last year's charmer My Favourite Cake. The Seed of the Sacred Fig is about reasonable people defeated by an unreasonable society.
جلوی چشام دوستامو کتک زدن گرفتنشون.
خودم میدونم چی بگم چی نگم. دیگه برای من تعیین تکلیف نکنی ها. به خدا میذارم از این خونه میرم.
Iman is a long-time lawyer who's been working his way up the ranks for 20 years, and at the start of the film, his dream has come true. He's been made an investigating judge. His wife, Najmeh, is delighted for him. A judge means a higher salary, even a bigger house.
نصرت قبول باشه. خیلی بهت افتخار میکنم.
What Iman doesn't tell his family, he has 2 daughters, Rezvan at university, Sana still at school, is that being a judge isn't as glamorous as it looks. Some of it is quite unpleasant, like being told by your boss who to find guilty and sentenced to death without trial, that sort of thing.
خب الانم که قاضی تحقیقات شده این خطرها هست دیگه.
گفتم شرایط زندگی ما عوض شده باید خیلی مراقب باشیم.
He also shocks his wife when he shows her the gun he's been told to take home for protection. Protection against whom, asks Najmeh. Are you being asked to do something unjust?
اینو بهم دادن برای حفاظت شخصی.
برای چی؟
حفاظت از خودمون.
الان از تو چیزی خواستن؟
And this is a bad time for a judge trying to see everything safely in black and white. The whole country is suddenly facing upheavals from an unexpected quarter. Women, particularly young women, are taking to the streets protesting about years of unfair treatment.
بدشانسی این شلوغی ها همزمان شده با شروع کار من تو این شهر.
تو هم شعار دادی؟
شعار دادم سریعم در آوردم.
At issue is lack of freedom, and Iman's daughters are both fiercely supportive of the protesting crowds, including many of their friends. In particular, women are fighting back at the notorious morality police and the mandatory wearing of a hijab. Sana and Rezvan regularly get into fierce arguments with their father.
بعد تو از یه سری اوباشی که تمام مسئلهشون لخ شدن تو خیابونه حمایت میکنی؟
کی میخواد لخ شه؟ من که از لخ شدن
همینایی که کف خیابونن.
کیا بابا؟
How can you defend these crazy women? They all want to parade naked in the streets. Well, how can you defend the brutal police? They're beating up our friends for no reason at all. That sort of stuff. And then the gun goes missing. Suddenly, what seemed to be a political story about people power versus injustice becomes very personal. Somebody in the family was so offended by the presence of a gun that they stole it. Iman's job is now on the line. If he can't produce the gun, he's going to jail, and the prospect drives him crazy. As a picture of a country in unreasonable turmoil, why is it so important women be kept in their place? Why can't a film director be free to make any story he likes? The Seed of the Sacred Fig is fascinating, particularly the news footage. But as a pure thriller, as the family turn on each other, it's riveting.
نگرانی خانوادت بفهمن چی کاره ای؟ میدونستی بابا تو قاتله؟
تو خونه خودم احساس ناامنی میکنم.
While our sympathy is for Iman's wife and daughters, is it a coincidence that the Iranian films most hated by the authorities are often from a woman's perspective? By the end, it's hard not to feel for Iman too. He's a man who finally got his dream job, only to realise it was a curse.
چه مصیبتی بود افتاد تو زندگی من.
I have to confess, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was an unfamiliar name to me, a German cleric who stood up to the Nazis before and during the Second World War. But he's clearly well known in German and church circles. There have been half a dozen films about Bonhoeffer.
All of whom have been in the gas chambers. Devout to Christians like you.
If you were speaking to many members of my broken church, you would be right. But you are not.
When you cross the border, you're free.
Free? What is free?
The latest one, Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin, comes from the predominantly Christian Angel Studios, the people behind another based-on-real-life project, the hit film Sound of Freedom.
Churchill sees Germany as a whole. He's afraid that a bomb traced to England would mean invasion or worse.
Invasion? Invasion? My country was invaded from within.
Like Sound of Freedom, Bonhoeffer doesn't feel compelled to stick religiously to the facts. Did Dietrich Bonhoeffer really discover jazz in Harlem and end up jamming with Louis Armstrong all in one night? Well, possibly not, but I digress. What is the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer?
I need you to understand that your life will not be the same after I speak these words. We have devised a plot to assassinate the Führer.
Well, I'm not sure Pastor, Spy, Assassin is the best place to learn that. Even by the lax standards of movie subtitles, this is a bit misleading. Dietrich was certainly a pastor. We meet him as a boy near the end of World War I, being given a Bible by his beloved brother. He later goes to Bible school in Harlem, where he meets racism for the first time.
We're so fortunate not having anything like this in Germany.
My brother, hate comes in every color. Your eyes just haven't been opened yet.
I'm afraid you have to get used to clunky lines like, "Thank heavens there's no chance of any racism arising in Germany in the early 30s. Though I was more irritated by lines clearly taken out of Bonhoeffer's many theological books to be used as dialogue. Do people actually talk like this?
Our silence in the face of evil is itself evil.
Words aren't words anymore, Dietrich. They're nooses, bullets. This is a trigger that cannot be unpulled.
Once Dietrich comes back home, he sees that in fact the Nazis have started taking over. So he and his right-thinking Protestant friends speak up, often in pulpits. On hearing this, various people in Nazi uniforms get a bit huffy, occasionally storming out of the church. Is that it?
Guide our hands. Guide our trembling hands.
God sent Germany a true savior!
Well, obviously not. The religious establishment find themselves stymied even when, I think I've got this right, Adolf Hitler and his fellow travelling bishops decide to remove anything Jewish from the entire Bible. Some churches, according to this film at any rate, even replaced the Bible with Hitler's Mein Kampf. That can't be true, surely.
Hitler has captured the nation's imagination, Dietrich.
Bravery is a rare commodity.
You will go to England as our spy.
Anyway, sticking as close to the storyline as this film does, senior German clerics from a breakaway sector called the Confessing Church send Dietrich Bonhoeffer to England as a spy. Well, not quite. More someone telling the Brits what's going on in Germany, but Dietrich is disillusioned at how little help he's getting.
What good is the church if it doesn't speak for the victims of the state?
The church's job is to kindle peace, peacefully.
Oh, you mean silently?
By halfway through Bonhoeffer, I knew how he felt. Despite some interest in finding out why Dietrich Bonhoeffer warranted at least 5 movies about him, I kept being wrong-footed by its impenetrable timeline. We start in 1945 with our hero being sent to a concentration camp before flashing back to random parts of his past.
Something's coming. Something unstoppable.
Look around you, my friend. How much light do you see?
We keep rocketing backwards and forwards through time, presumably to jazz things up, like Louis Armstrong. And also, I suspect, to gloss over the fact Bonhoeffer didn't actually do a lot other than write. In fact, his friend Martin Niemöller was responsible for the most famous lines in the film.
Because when the Nazis first came for the socialists, I didn't speak out. Because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the Jews. And I didn't speak out. Not soon enough, because I am not a Jew.
In the end, I learnt far more about the pastor, spy and assassin, including the fact that Dietrich Bonhoeffer didn't actually assassinate anyone, from 2 minutes of Googling than I did from 2 hours of this film. The fact is, just being a decent chap in a time and a place where decent chaps were very thin on the ground isn't necessarily the basis of a good story, though I'm sure Bonhoeffer's been the subject of many a good sermon over the years.
God forgive us if we do this. Will he forgive us if we don't?
When the first ever best-selling author Homer produced his second tale, the Odyssey, the story of Greek king Odysseus trying to get home after masterminding the fall of Troy, he certainly didn't skimp on action or drama. And yet after countless dangerous events, flashbacks aplenty as our hero tells his war stories, and the eventual death of all his men, the best is yet to come.
Our king Odysseus, the smartest of all the heroes. He led us for 10 years in the Trojan War, before his brilliant plan to build the great horse.
Well, that at any rate is the idea behind The Return, directed and co-written by Umberto Pasolini, and reuniting the stars of The English Patient, Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche. It opens with Odysseus sprawled on the beach of his home, the island of Ithaca. He hopes to make contact with his queen, Penelope, and their son Telemachus, who wasn't even born when his father went to war.
Then out poured our soldiers. Odysseus led us to victory.
People love stories.
You were there?
Since then, the island has gone to rack and ruin. Everyone now assumes Odysseus is dead. Why else hasn't he come home? And therefore Penelope must be in need of a husband. If you think that sounds a bit Jane Austen, look at all the other staples Homer established in The Return.
I am Odysseus' wife.
Odysseus is dead.
Not to me.
There was no king. He sailed to Troy years ago. Took the best men with him.
All year, suitors have been turning up, waiting for his widow to choose a new husband to be king.
There are Shakespearean rival suitors. There's a ticking clock. Penelope will choose a husband as soon as she finishes weaving this dress. There's a mystery. Why can't the smartest man in the Greek army find his way home? And an archery contest that inspired not only Robin Hood and William Tell, but Katniss Everdeen and the Hunger Games.
Scoundrels, they're just here for your wealth.
Look at this island. A wasteland. Gangs of thugs terrifying the people.
They need me alive, at least until I choose my husband.
And at the end, for all you John Wick fans, there's an all-action finale where, single-handedly against impossible odds, Odysseus takes out the trash. Did Homer really invent all these elements, along with the monsters, enchantresses and lotus-eaters earlier in the Odyssey? We'll never know, of course, but he was certainly the first to put them in a book and collect the royalties.
Mother, we can't live with those savages anymore.
I will choose soon, when I finish my wedding cloak.
That woman's making a fool of you, of us all.
Even if you're not interested in the myths and legends of ancient Greece, it's still endlessly fascinating watching the birth of storytelling. The best thing about The Return is that everything you see is basically Homer's story, but not necessarily all of it.
I know who you are. A tramp. If I were free, I'd fight for what was mine. I'd fight for my people.
Notably absent are those essential elements in Homer, the gods. He normally wrote them in when the plot didn't make sense without a bit of outside influence. Here, Odysseus is on his own as he discovers he's got competition getting in touch with the missus.
What will the people say when they see I have returned alone? That I led all their men to their deaths?
This land is ruined. I sacrificed it for him.
There are copious suitors for Penelope's hand, all called things like Polybus and Antinous. I found it less confusing to call them the tall one, the old one, the fat one, and the dodgy one. The dodgy one was Antinous. Watch out for him.
I have a proposal for you. A hunting party.
Where is he?
Who are you?
Your waiting is over.
But lest you think that Queen Penelope is the merest Disney princess waiting to be won by a handsome prince, that's not how Juliette Binoche rolls. Among other things, she's famously keen on learning new skills for a part, be it ballet dancing, cordon bleu cooking, oil painting, and in this case, working an ancient Greek loom. If anyone can keep a band of roughneck suitors in line, it's Juliette.
The one amongst you who can string the bow and shoot the arrow through the axes, that man will be my husband.
Quibblers may say The Return is a bit long and slow, depending on an already invested audience, but I became fascinated by so many now familiar elements of subsequent fiction. The lovable sidekick, the giveaway scar, only the king has this, the faithful dog, the amazing sharpshooting feat that later inspired 1,000 westerns.
Close the gates.
How can men find a war but not find their way home?
Some war becomes home.
Give the man the bow.
They don't write them like that anymore, but of course they do. 3,000 years later, anyone writing stories, action, romance, drama and fantasy owes an enormous debt to Homer, the guy who started it all. And on a laudable line of credit where credit's due, it's time to go. I'm Simon Morris, and I hope you'll join me at the movies, same time next week.